Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us here today. And on behalf of the British Council, I'd like to welcome everyone to Malaysia, specifically our country briefing today, Malaysia Now, Arts and Culture Mosaic. My name is Kukathas. I will be your moderator for today. I have black hair and black eyes, and I'm sitting in my study, so there are books just behind me. For those of you who are engaging and encountering Malaysia for the first time in the session today, I hope the session today will offer you a glimpse into the complexities and also the richness of the cultural mosaic that is Malaysia, a land of many languages and dialects, over 40, I believe, in everyday use, many ethnicities, many more than the 3 or 4 that are often represented, many religions deeply and devoutly practiced, many landscapes, many living cultural practices, many opinions, a harmonious and sometimes not so harmonious cacophony. The session today will give us a retrospective as well as a look forward at opportunities and strategies for future collaborations. We'll start today with two speakers of note who will offer insights and hopes for the future. So to begin with, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Ms. Jazreel Goh, who after working for the British Council in mainland China for many years, returned to Malaysia in September 2020 to become the director of the British Council in Malaysia. Ms. Goh led the UK's largest education, marketing and partnership initiatives in mainland China, and in 2017 was awarded an MBE for her services to UK education in China. I'd like to invite her now to give her opening remarks for this Malaysia country session. Thank you.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jazreel Goh, Director Malaysia of the British Council. Thank you for making time to join us today. It's great to have the opportunity to meet all of you today, and definitely a fantastic opportunity to review our past, but also to discuss future of UK-Malaysia collaboration in arts. 10 years ago, the British Council in Malaysia commissioned a project between SuperEverything in the UK and various Malaysian artists. The outcome of the collaboration was a body of work that explored and showcased the diversity of Malaysia in all its forms, from race to cultures, but also brought attention to important thematic society issues. 10 years on, this collaboration and its topics are still relevant. And today, we are gathered to celebrate the launch of the SuperEverything anniversary album coming up soon, as well as the long-lasting friendship and ongoing collaborations that followed from this connection made possible by the British Council. SuperEverything is the embodiment of the meaning of our work in arts to enable new, long-lasting and meaningful connections between Malaysia and the UK art sectors. Revisiting this project with its protagonists will give us a chance to discuss the evolution of the arts and culture sectors in Malaysia and what has changed and what has not. Today, we will also have the opportunity to share with you 2 reports which was commissioned to look at identifying opportunities and collaborations between our 2 countries. Malaysia's art forms and practices are as diverse as its people and culture. Throughout the pandemic, we've witnessed the resilience and determination of artists here who are trying to find the strength to bounce back and creative ways to carry on the work. I hope that this session will inspire all of you and artists from the UK, artists from Malaysia to explore and to continue to find potential collaboration opportunities. The British Council has been in Malaysia for over 70 years. We work across a range of art forms and disciplines, including film, music, and visual arts. And this is in the hopes of encouraging debate and increasing access to safe spaces for dialogue among artists, creative professionals, and audiences. Our Connections Through Culture Arts Grant is a project aimed to spark innovative ways for participants from Malaysia and the UK to collaborate to the arts. And this has resulted in collaborative activities from music, environmental sustainability, sexuality to disability. Our work in the arts has been central in our mission to foster friendly knowledge, understanding and trust between people of the UK and the wider world. We seek new ways of connecting with and understanding each other through the arts to develop stronger creative sectors around the world that are better connected and engaged with the UK. However, we would not have been able to achieve anything without partners like yourself. So thank you all for your efforts and support in promoting UK and Malaysia arts. And just before I leave, I'm pleased to introduce Izan Shatrina Muhammad Salihuddin, founder of the Cultural Economy Development Agency, Cendana, who has generously agreed to give us a keynote address. And Cendana, for those of you who are unaware, is Malaysia's Cultural Economy Development Agency, set up by the Malaysian government to build a vibrant, sustainable, and ambitious cultural economy for Malaysia. So I'll hand over to the panel and to Izan now for her keynote. Thank you all and have a great session today.
Thank you. Hello, selamat datang, welcome, apa kabar, and how are you? Thank you, Jezreel, for a very kind introduction, and I'm happy to be here to share a bit more about Malaysia's arts and culture ecosystem, and perhaps a tad bit about the creative economy and what's happening in Malaysia. I apologize, I did prepare some slides and I'm not able to share it with you, but please feel free to dig up more information on Cendana's website, www.cendana.com.my, or you can reach me on Izan, IZAN, at cendana.com.my. I'm part of this very ambitious and yet small team who want to make a difference in Malaysia's arts and cultural ecosystem. And we've been around since 2017. We are, as a matter of fact, a unit of My Creative Ventures, a wholly owned company of the Minister of Finance Incorporated, and we report to the Ministry of Communications and Multimedia, Malaysia. So Malaysia, what about Malaysia? I'm proud to be living in this country that has the makings of a global creative hub. Already our capital city, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, is a major financial and education center in Southeast Asia. It has much potential to diversify its economic drivers. Malaysia, with a population of over 30 million and growing, has the scale and capacity to support further economic diversification. And this is also supported by well-developed transportation, and some say also as an education hub. Like Joe had rightfully pointed out, it is an ethically diverse with a growing international population, which together is creating a new distinctive identity for the country that interestingly has maintained its very varied and harmonious cultural heritage. Malaysia is vibrant and alive with confidence and ambition and is rising from the pandemic, even though it has hit us quite badly, with more than 90% of our arts and culture practitioners negatively impacted by COVID-19. So I'm hoping that I can share with you briefly about Malaysia's creative industries. In the past 5 years, Malaysia's contribution to the creative industries is 1.9% of the GDP for the past 5 years. And it's in its scope, the arts and culture organizations is highest in registration, with 76% of organizations registered in the creative industry being arts and culture. In terms of its ministries and the ministries that we work with, there are a few, but if at any point of time you need to make reference, please feel free to reach out to us at Cendana, where we will be able to facilitate those connections for you. Based on our work in Malaysia the past 4 years, there's a call for prayers now, so I will make it very quick. For craft makers in Malaysia, the hotspots are in Borneo, Sabah, Sarawak, Johor, Malacca, Terengganu, and Kelantan, which is the east coast of Peninsular Malaysia, Perak, and Kedah. But you will see a slightly different demographic for non-craft makers. If you're interested, there is hotspots in Selangor, Kuala Lumpur, Johor, Perak, Penang, and Borneo. All slightly different backgrounds, but very rich in its arts and culture. What do we do with Cendana? We work on building a vibrant, sustainable, and ambitious cultural economy. And we work on 3 strategic pillars: energizing the arts, which is all about the demand side; empowering the communities, which is all about the supply side; and reorganizing policies, which is all about advocating for better policies for the arts. So if you're interested in data, if you're interested in directories of who to get in touch with in either sectors, performing arts, visual arts, independent music, and craft, our website will be the first place you'd like to dig up and get those directories and get in touch with. If you're interested in working with any of our artists here, we'll be happy to facilitate those introductions and also correspond and provide support to our Malaysian artists to work with you in the UK as well. FYI, in the past 2 years, we have seen most of our artists' work, 92% of their resources are funded by the government and 8% from the private sector. And 87% of them are part-timers. And hence why it's very key for us to continuously support them. I will leave you with that because of respect for the Azan. And I'm hoping that I'm able to answer your questions if you have any after the session or after the panel. I really do apologize. Thank you again, British Council, and thank you, Jezreel.
Thank you very much, Izan, and thank you, Jezreel, as well for your earlier remarks. So in order to move forward, at the British Council, we thought it would be a good idea to look back and in particular look back at SuperEverything, a collaboration that, as Jezreel said, was done 10 years ago, a very loved and very fruitful collaboration, I think, between Malaysia and UK-based artists. So 10 years ago, the British Council invited leading UK audiovisual artists, the Light Surgeons, to create and develop a project that would bring their unique creative processes and artistic direction to produce a new piece of live cinema. Chris Allen and Tim Cowie spent their first weeks in KL researching potential ideas, meeting an array of Malaysian artists, filmmakers, musicians, a Wayan Kulit troupe, social commentators, and trying to gain insight into the Malaysian context. The Light Surgeons subsequently returned to Malaysia twice to work with the many collaborating and participating artists and people, filming, documenting, recording, as well as creating new music. Out of these encounters and meetings was developed SuperEverything. And later we'll get to meet some of the key collaborators on that project. But first, to begin with, we're going to show you a video of SuperEverything. This video will give you a sense of Malaysia, which in the words of Christopher Allen and Tim Cowie of the Light Surgeons is a rich fusion of different cultures and the contrast between tradition and modernity.
Are essentially, we're all the same. We have the same instincts, we have the same impulses. We're just conditioned differently.
You will find the notion of memory and remembrance as being a very, very crucial one. And that memory, history, lineage, and ritual are very closely entwined.
Who am I? Where did you come from? What is your story?
The whole world is becoming one village, one small village. It's about looking holistically at everything. What you eat, what you buy, where you go, how you live your life, your everyday ritual.
I think the pursuit for purpose is the meaning. I'm not sure we actually arrive at any sense of the truth.
We have to go beyond race, we have to go beyond religion, we have to go beyond creed.
There are far deeper fundamental questions that need to be answered. Questions about justice, questions about democracy, even questions about freedom.
Because I think if we don't know who we are, if we don't know where we've come from, how will we know where we're going?
So that was a glimpse into SuperEverything. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce you to some of the collaborators of that project. To begin with Christopher Allen, who is the founder and creative director of the Light Surgeons. He works as a creative producer, director, editor, audiovisual artist to create artistic works in moving images that can be viewed as film, installations, and live performances. He helped to pioneer the practice of live cinema, and his work has toured internationally, of course, to great acclaim. I'm also happy to introduce to you Pauline Fun, writer, literary translator, cultural researcher, director of the Georgetown Literary Festival, and here today in her capacity as a creative director of Pusaka, one of the organizations which collaborated with the Light Surgeons on their project SuperEverything. And finally, Ng Cho Guan, renowned Malaysian composer, sound designer, the co-founder of Kukathas Studio. He's an active thereminist. We will talk more about that later in his project with SuperEverything. He's an improviser, an educator, and a cyclist. This is not an unimportant point. And he's a familiar face in many international arts festivals. His body of work is diverse, rooted in very contemporary explorations of technology, but his work transcends easy categorizations. His work is often interactive, and he describes his 5-year-long multidisciplinary work 2020 as both a meditation on the future and an active progression into the future. And Guan, of course, as I said, is a key collaborator on SuperEverything. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you all. And I'm sure you must be happy to see each other again as well. I know it hasn't just been 10 years on for all of you. Some of, I think Guan and Christopher, you've met each other many times since that first meeting 10 years ago. So I'm going to sort of jump straight into things and ask, just because for those people who don't really understand this concept, Christopher, you're well known for your documentary performance. It's called Live Cinema. Can you tell us just very briefly, what is live cinema?
Oh, hi, thanks, and thank you and welcome. Thank you for having me. So yeah, my name's Chris Allen. I'm talking to you from a slightly cold corner of Hackney Wick in East London. I've got a slight beard. Live cinema is a term that I guess applies to quite a few different things. But we found we kind of liked it because we've come from working a lot with music and visuals and working in kind of club culture and working with bands and developing visuals around live music. And over the years, we sort of started to sort of become more the creators of both. So we weren't just creating visuals for someone else's music, we were making the music and collaborating with the musicians and bringing more storytelling into that space. And so these sort of shows didn't really kind of fit the club culture sort of context and tended to be presented to seated audiences in more sort of theatre spaces where people have got, you know, we've got people's attention and we can deal with stories and issues and things and have more of a critical kind of audience. So that for me is what live cinema is, but it's a very broad space. You know, you have people working with code and generative visuals and very abstract kind of concept of cinema, and then all genres of music. So the project that we were very grateful to be invited to lead and to collaborate on in Malaysia, SuperEverything, is a really great example of live cinema, and is one of our most proudest kind of projects to date. So,
I mean, at one point, I think you said, or Tim said, that there's a direct line between the principles of live cinema and earlier, more familiar forms of projected theatrical performances like Wayang Kulit, which is very familiar to all of us in Malaysia and in Indonesia. And one of your key collaborators on this project was Pusaka. So maybe I would like to ask Pauline to talk a little bit about, you know, what was your and Pusaka's reaction in being asked to collaborate, and what did you find that was energizing or interesting for you to collaborate?
Thank you, Jo, and thank you to the British Council for inviting me. I'm Pauline. I have long black hair, and yes, I also have a massive study library behind me. I think the collaboration was a natural one. Like you said, Jo, there are many parallels and connections between Chris's live cinema concept and, of course, older forms like the Wayan Kulit. And the Wayan Kulit, of course, is something that is native and also not native to Malaysia, in as many of our cultural traditions are, that they traverse and are really amalgamations of cultural confluence. And you find different forms of Wayan Kulit, of course, in Indonesia, across Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, even in Cambodia and in Thailand as well. I really appreciate the fact that that the light surgeons chose to work with Wayan Kulit, because I think, one, it is a natural cultural form to perhaps work with if you're looking at Southeast Asia, but I also think it's particularly open to collaboration and to innovation. In Malaysia, but in particular, we have the kind of Wayan Kulit that we have in Kelantan is a folk tradition. So it's very different actually from the Wayan Kulit that you find in Indonesia, much of which is a more classical tradition. And folk traditions in particular, and if you look at the Wayan Kulit Kelantan, it is very open to improvisation. And in fact, the aspect of improvisation is one of those core, most important aspects of the Wayan Kulit, that if you don't master the art of improvisation, you're not considered a master of that art. And so I think that aspect in itself lends a sense of openness of the Wayan Kulit masters and the performers to collaborate and to improvise, makes them very versatile depending on which audience they are performing with, and also who they're working with, that they're very open to the moment. And I think that's what makes them an exciting form to work with. It also, I think, collaborations like this, I think always it's an opportunity to deconstruct the notions of what is traditional and what is contemporary. We, of course, Pusaka, my organization, works with traditional forms, but in most senses, that is a term of convenience. You know, we work with traditions, but all of those traditions are living traditions, and all of them are created and reinvented at every moment. I think the line that we draw is basically that they have been inherited, that there's a heritage and a lineage to them that has been passed down, usually via the oral tradition. But sometimes people tend to think, especially those who are not so familiar with the traditions we work with, some people tend to think of tradition as something that is very static and something that is very old and something that is obsolete and not open to innovation and collaboration. So I think this collaboration was something that really was an opportunity to deconstruct that.
Yeah, so we'll come and talk a little bit about your collaboration, Christopher, with Juan. But before that, maybe just picking up from what Pauline has been talking about, what was your experience in collaborating with the Wayan Kulit troupe?
So I think Wayan Kulit was something I was fascinated in, and I didn't really know that much about it until I connected with Edin through the British Council. I think what's really interesting about it is that it, as Pauline's really perfectly pointed out, it sort of gets to this root of cinema, and it goes back to an era of well, it's not even go back. It's a living form of cinema. And for me, as an artist who works with analog equipment and digital equipment, that's sort of what I guess we see is, like, you know, this sort of technology is becoming more accessible. People have it have a phone that they can film and edit and share film and video. And so I guess we're sort of returning in a kind of McLuhan sense to this sort of era where, you know, we have agency over telling stories and sharing them. And they don't have to be these static linear things. They can bring performance, commentary, satiricism, politics, social issues, local issues, and people can perform them and present them to audiences. And there's something very important, I guess, after the pandemic. This has really underlined this really massively, that, you know, the in-person, the kind of actual presence, the liveness of performing and presenting work is really important socially. So all of those things are really clearly demonstrated in Wayan Kulit as an art form. And for me, it was just amazing to come to Malaysia and to travel up to Kelantan with Edin and to see a performance. So I must sort of make it clear that we didn't collaborate with the dalang, the puppet. We went to see the performance. We've recorded it. We included it in our piece of work as a sort of introduction, because for us, we really wanted the audience to kind of contemplate and to think about live cinema and what we were doing on stage as a sort of contemporary kind of version of this, you know. So there's a lot of shadow play in the way the performance is presented that you probably saw in the opening clip. So we were actively playing around with shadow play, and we've done this in other shows where we play with kind of what is real and what's on stage and what isn't on stage, and what's pre-recorded and what's sampled. And when we're performing our shows, they're not edited and just played. We're editing live. So we have computers that can run real-time video. We have many layers of video, and we are feeling the performance and feeling the music, and we're compositing and we're cutting and we're editing and we're sampling the music live. So it's always a little bit different. There's always a story. And so, you know, Edin's amazing contribution and his words, and Bernice and many other people that speak in the project kind of form this kind of story. And then woven in around that, we have music by Guan and Rhythm and Bronze and Hans Percussion and Flicker, who's another amazing artist from Malaysia that we work with. So all of these elements, all of these sort of threads form a kind of tapestry, if you like, and that tapestry changes and it's improvised, as Pauline was saying. So I think there's a lot of connections, and I think for me, you know, look, not thinking of heritage and tradition as this sort of dead thing that's in the past is super important, you know. And so hence the title SuperEverything was sort of about everything, you know, and we tried to make a piece of work that also transcended Malaysia and Malaysian audiences and reached out and sort of spoke about the kind of human condition and environmental issues and all these other things. So the piece, much like a Wayan Kulit performance, touches on lots of themes and different things and is open to interpretations.
So I'm going to jump right in because we haven't got so much time.
Sorry, yeah.
It's okay, it's fine. To ask us, it's such an exciting project, but to ask Guan about, you know, as a composer and as a musician and somebody who played the theremin, particularly in this piece, I mean, what was SuperEverything to you? Because I know you went on to do many collaborations later with Christopher and with Tim as well. So what did SuperEverything mean to you as an artist?
Yeah, this show actually made me become super everything because I need to do all round kind of thing. I'm not just playing theremin, I'm not just playing piano, but I'm also chopping. I'm kind of like cooking on stage show to try to bring out the taste, the smell of the show.
We use smell. Smell was part of it.
The insane the smell of the food and everything. But by the way, I'm Guan. I have gray hair and I'm sitting virtually on top of the Kuala Lumpur, and the valley Kuala Lumpur is just right behind me. So yeah, indeed. So this show is really, when I first know about the title, the SuperEverything, I was so convinced by this work. Yeah.
And sorry, Guan, just before, because we have to finish up this little session, this tiny short little session where we find out a little bit about SuperEverything. But if you could say to other Malaysians or to other people who are listening today, what would be the benefit? What is it about collaboration that appeals to you?
Yeah, I really enjoy the process of creating this work, from the pre-production to the post-production and also the touring. But very quickly, I think I really enjoy and putting me into this project to look at how, as a team and Chris, both of them as an outsider, foreigners looking into Malaysia, there's a very big different kind of perspective to me, because we, the local artists, the Malaysian artists, been living in this country for so long. Sometimes we are we have so many blind spots that we couldn't really tell anymore. I think it's great to have the outsider to, bringing this awareness to us. I think that's for the pre-production, as well as when we're touring. Like it is so much like a British artist and a Malaysian artist, like hand in hand, like putting this live show happening from pre-recorded material life elements and stuff like that. I think this really gel pretty well.
I think we learned so much as well from working with Guan and all the other artists, and particularly through Gray, who was the person who we worked a lot with, who introduced us to Edin and Bernice, and books like Farish Noir's What Your Teacher Didn't Tell You, which was one of the books that I read when we first visited. And I think one of the most important things from my perspective, I think, was the opportunity to come and visit and to research really informed the whole thing, and just gave us that time to go and meet people and to form relationships and connect, but also to contemplate and to think. And it's something that Edin said in the piece that always resonates with me. There's a difference between information and knowledge. You know, that people these days, they have access to a lot of information, but they maybe don't spend a lot of time contemplating things. And so for me, that was one of the great lessons of the whole project, and still remains with me today. I touched my chest because there's another very Malaysian thing, but it really touched me. And I think it's a really important thing to remember. And I think for artists, when you're going into making a new work and you're going into working in other cultures and countries, just take time and to really, you know, and read books and really try to engage and listen and learn, you know, and what an amazing, beautiful opportunity that was for both me, Tim, and all the other people that worked on it. It's a big team, so
I hate to say that we're out of time, because time is such an important thing.
We could talk a long time on the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's a very full and vibrant collaboration that you did.
Yeah.
But you have a chance to sort of, you know, if you have questions to ask of any of the collaborators, you can put them in the chat box later,
Sure.
and we can come back to them in the Q&A that we've got a bit later on. But to begin, but now we're going to move quickly to our next part of the session. Thank you so much to the other three. We'll come back to you. But here we're going to meet some other people who've been driving the conversation forward on arts, culture, and sustainability in Malaysia, doing valuable research, proposing cultural strategies for rejuvenation and growth. So we're going to unpack two reports on Malaysia, one on the Malaysian arts sector and the second on cultural cities. And the aim of this is to identify the areas of connection and collaboration between the two countries. So to walk us through these two comprehensive and impressive reports are the people who wrote them, and hopefully we can get a sense of insight into Malaysia by unpacking these reports. The person behind the principal researcher and coordinator of both these reports is Dr. Tom Fleming, who's a leading global authority on the creative economy, cultural policy, and the role of creativity and culture for sustainable city making. You can read more about him in his bio. Everything will be on the Hopin platform, but just in the interest of time, I'm going to skip his introduction. Let it be known that he has been working to develop cultural city profiles and to identify strategic opportunities for culture and the creative industries. Anne Lee was a key contributor to the Malaysian Sector Insight Report. She's a Sabahan, she's an award-winning playwright, as well as a researcher. She has done her PhD in Southeast Asian Studies. Her book is on political humor, a book that's coming out, I should say, Outbreaks of Satire and Dissent in Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. And she's a supervising researcher of the Censorship Chronology, which documents censorship and related controversies in Malaysian arts and culture. So Malaysia is not without its fair share of controversies. And finally, Lee Jia Peng is a key researcher for the Malaysian Cities Report, the founder of Pollen 8. She incorporates her experience in theatre, the arts, branding, and play strategies to rejuvenate urban and corporate spaces as well as hospitals. So I'm going to let the three of them now walk you through these two really comprehensive reports.
everybody. My name's Tom Fleming, and I'm wearing a black jumper. I've got greyish hair, enormous headphones, which I seem to be living in all of the time these days. And it's a real pleasure to join you all today. This session, we're going to explore two pieces of research as introduced by Joe. The first focuses on how to tell the story, really, of the Malaysian arts and cultural sector, given its complexity, given its diversity, given its depth and history. And as I was struck very much by what Chris said in the previous session, in that there is a difference between information and knowledge. And this exercise, alongside other research exercises that have been commissioned by the British Council, they are explorations in knowledge development because they're mutually developed, connecting UK and Malaysian researchers to try to co-create a narrative. But very much, I feel that we're still in the foothills of that knowledge creation, and that we're very much at a point where we're gathering information and running to stand still because of this extremely complex and fast-changing country. And on that note, I think the British Council can be credited for undertaking a lot of research. We heard earlier on from Izan Satrina from Cendana, and Cendana in some ways was born from a study commissioned or co-commissioned by the British Council, which undertook a baseline study on the cultural and creative industries for Kuala Lumpur and the Klang Valley, which was the first attempts at developing a baseline of the creative economy in Malaysia. But how do we go beyond the cliche? How do we go beyond the usual tropes that describe Malaysia in terms of its diversity, the mosaic, in terms of its tradition, in terms of its relationship between tradition and contemporary? And these two pieces of research hopefully take us beyond the cliche and give us and empower us with a little bit more knowledge than perhaps previously we had. And certainly, I recommend that you, if you can, access the two pieces of work on the Hop-In Pavilion for Malaysia, which will give you more insight. So without further ado, I just want to introduce to you the insights research. There's 100 pages of content covering 6 different sectors across the arts and cultural and creative industries of Malaysia. But it's still, as Anna, I'm sure will describe, very much a snapshot. It attempts to give you a shared front door of insights into the cultural landscape and to point you towards where there could be opportunities for collaboration and mutual development. So we're going to hear from Anne, and then we're going to go straight into Jiaping, who will talk about the cities research, which focuses on 8 cities across Malaysia and gives an insight into the cultural dynamism, the distinctiveness, what we clumsily call the movers and shakers in terms of people who are working in an activist or an entrepreneurial role to make things happen in those cities. And together, these pieces of work hopefully can provide insights that are useful for future collaborations. Over to you now, Anne, if you may.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom, and thank you, Joe, earlier. Hi, everyone. I'm a rare Malaysian. I look white. I have white hair. My mother was Hakka Chinese and dad is English, Caucasian, as many say and presume, from Bolton, 1934. I'm actually in dad's den. There's a blank wall behind me, a wire that loops around the door to the phone and the TV outside, kind of like a lifeline. Let me just say first that 2 generations have lived with the paradigm of culture and arts tucked under tourism. But the slogans "Fascinating Malaysia" and "Malaysia Truly Asia" all too often became, as one renowned artistic director described it, Malaysiana dance extravaganzas exploited as dispensable exotica for promotional purposes. And since then, another cultural pundit has put it, if not careful, the creative economy, which comprises up to 15% of global GDP, leads to one outstanding product, the hipster cafe. Now, such cynicism about commercialization and gentrification might be forgiven, as this has been and remains a difficult and grief-stricken COVIDian time. And yet, we might well focus on the innovation and resilience that has been shown in response. Now, our introductory report, as Tom said, It's based on research from January to June this year. It covers 6 sectors. Each profile contains financial figures, an ecosystem, brief historical perspective, movers and shakers, and collaboration opportunities. And it's to be read, for example, with other reports such as the Hubs for Good Toolkit. Now, I'm going to focus a little bit on literature because at the moment it falls through the cracks somewhat, being not funded as yet by Cendana or My Creative Ventures. Yet literature, of course, novels, short stories, poetry, scripts, and plays, demonstrates Malaysian diversity perhaps better than any other sector. And mosaic is a term from academic Gulam Sawa Yusuf. It's more appropriate than melting pot or parallel streams, and it recalls pixels, the smaller, even minute details that make up the larger picture. I keep going my, okay. So in terms of, say, interior graphic, furniture, urban design, from the statistic department's point of view, arts and culture are within 3 so-called scopes of creative industries: multimedia, cultural art, and cultural heritage. The categorizations are not always obvious, and stats from various government bodies don't all match, but this is unsurprising given that there are different emphases. The point is, the shift in general awareness is ongoing from the dance extravaganzas, if you will, to the digital economy, noting that Malaysians are digitally literate, although depending on the age and definition exactly of what literacy is. Now, on the left, if you look, iconic plural lingualism is the distinguishing characteristic of Malaysia, says academic Rachel Liao. Now, while you may hear this plural lingualism expressed in 3 main ethnic groups, Malay, Chinese, Indian, and Dan Lain or others, there are about 140 spoken languages within a population of only 32 million or so. Now, this is a motherlode of stories and images to populate and inspire any number of contemporary film, art, gaming, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence, and what have you. The diversity of languages sees in Sabah alone a state about the size of Scotland, Kadazan as the main indigenous language out of about 55, or at least according to respected linguist Asma Haji Omar. It's clear on the left that the national language is Bahasa Melayu or Bahasa Malaysia or Malay. But if you look just quickly at Iban, an example of oral and written literature, this is the main indigenous language of Sarawak. There is an oral tradition conveyed through papanturai, wooden tablets. And as per the right pink arrow, stories in Iban have been published before Malaysia came into being in 1963. And as per the left pink arrow, contemporary fiction and poetry is written by authors such as Golda Mao, whose fantasy fiction is steeped in Iban mythology. Only writing in the national language receives significant public funding. National laureates are authors who write in Bahasa Melayu and happen to be mostly cishet males. So translation is vital. As Pauline, who was just there earlier, director of the Georgetown Literary Festival, has said, translation provides a real opportunity for meaningful cultural exchange, and as we might say, add commercialization, but it's threefold translation: inter-translation of our own languages, translation of world literature into Malay and other Malaysian languages, and translation, of course, of Malaysian literature into English and other world languages. Now, this photo features recent work by artist Yi Ilan, who's also in the picture, and her collaborators, including here, weaver Kak Roziah Jalalid. This is a collection of new tuka or placemats. To me, the work reflects how visual arts and crafts are connecting to a range of social and environmental concerns, not least preservation and protection, but also looking to provide marginalized communities with new business and sustainable development. Systemic and particular problems remain, like heavy costs of raw materials, and Sabah State is home to over 72% of rural Malaysians without electricity, but innovation and resilience continue. So much has changed for performing arts, considered non-essential for off and on for nearly 2 years. Theaters and cinemas only allowed to open long after restaurants, malls, and gyms. On the left, however, is Gulam Sawa's schema for Malaysia's highly complex mosaic of theatre, music, and dance forms, including storytelling, and the list is there, but it's largely intact, still intact, even as people talk of COVID going from pandemic to endemic now. On your far right, just one example of innovation and resilience, young dancer and choreographer Ikram Azhar has built a base on TikTok of over 400, well, it's more now, but at the time, it's 470,000 followers with 6.3 million likes by posting short videos and making a living via advertisers who seek to reach his followers base. On your right, according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, the Malaysian music industry generates up to 6.1 billion ringgit, or about 107 million pounds a year in value-added impact. Abundant talent in music composition exists. Just last week, a Malaysian rapper based in Taiwan released the lyrics of Fragile, which he performed together with an Australian singer. And he released them, sold them as non-fungus tokens or NFTs, earning some 4 million ringgit or about 715,000 pounds. Here too, there are bad and good signs. The Malaysian Philharmonic Orchestra has been closed down, even as new digital music platforms are building new revenue opportunities. But otherwise, as top left, Malaysian music exports are significantly underleveraged. The Rainforest Music Festival is perhaps the most well-known music festival in and out of the country. For film, on your right, we might say content fever is heightened, of course, at a time when many are still staying at home. The Malaysian box office and brain drain is strongly connected to Hollywood, also Bollywood, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and China. New partnerships are ongoing, and this on the right is one 5-year one between a mainland China production company and Malaysian one to produce a series of multiple cultural entertainment projects. Now, the movie that was supposed to have been started with a budget of about 42 million pounds, there hasn't been much heard of it since, but film and animation make up the largest part of the creative industries. And the one example would be the Malaysian computer animated children's adventure film called Upin and Ipin, The Lone Gibbon Chris, which was produced by Le Copac Productions. Apparently it outshone Disney's Incredibles 2 and claims the highest grossing animation film from a Southeast Asian country. Yet filmmaker Tan Chui Mui says too many want to be directors. She points out that more skills are needed in producing and script writing. Now, the spanner in the works for many is at least the unpredictability brought about by the culture of state censorship and social media, in the sense that the result is often of harassment and legal prosecution of artists that fall out of line. Still, the impetus for less government control comes from various associations, such as the Freedom Film Network. Now, I'm just going to go now to the last slide. I end with the collaborative opportunities that are common to all the sectors. I won't be able to go into a lot of detail right now, but it is my hope that we will do that later in the Q&A. But say first in terms of education, since the late 1960s and 70s, the country's formal and non-formal arts education has shifted with the times. The need now is to build and exchange technical and entrepreneurial capacity. So, for example, many artists have moved online, but lack the marketing skills and or shared digital platforms to be able to access audiences as such. Practice development is around the same timeless building of relationships between individuals and communities. There's also discovering ways to tour with, but not in carbon footprint damaging ways. But let me move just to artivism or artistic activism. Those in the arts aligned with allies in civil society and government to enable indigenous rights, environmental sustainability, cultural sustainability, freedom of expression, and space for minorities such as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer communities. All these words, of course, have their equivalents and origins in the 140 languages of Tanah Air, also known as Malaysia. Malaysia is a fast changing creative hub scene, and Japing will go into that. But I'm going to stop here and just wish you good luck and thank you for your attention.
Hi, thanks, Anne, for that. And I'm just going to go straight in because I understand that there's a bit of a time, scrunch. So I'm Japing Lee, and I was formerly from Tempatico, which is the agency that's listed on this report, but I'm now a Pollinate. So I have short bob hair, and people have been known to describe me and my face as rotund and cute. So, and I have a great smile. So I'm hoping to kind of infect everybody with some joy as it's kind of late for those in Southeast Asia. So good evening, everybody, and good morning to those in the UK. So how do I do justice in 15 minutes, something that has taken us 3 months to put together? The thing is, I can't. So what I'll do is I'll introduce you to a whistle-stop tour. And really, if you have difficulty plowing through all that information, and I totally understand if you do, you just need to understand that Malaysia has huge aspirations to be global. And so if you're in Kuala Lumpur is perhaps the center of it all. So if you look at the map, for those who are not familiar with Malaysia, if you look at the left spine where you have 02, 03, all the way to 06, the coastal areas are predominantly where all the trade started at the beginning or the birth of Malaya and Malaysia. And for some reason, the investments in cities and the arts have followed suit. But, I think that there needs to be a re-looking at some of the previously ignored sites in East Malaysia, which is Sabah and Sarawak, as well as East Malaysia of the peninsula, which is Kota Baru, Kelantan, because they have been relatively untouched. I think that there is a gem of creativeness and of keeping the origin craft alive, as well as some of the heritage and culture elements that are authentic to Malaysia. And I want to use the word authentic because we are fast losing our authentic culture. So hence the term same, but different means that the government, because it's easier to package everything. And I think that there was a mention of, the tourism package where culture is sold to you at the convenience of someone else rather than what you would actually see as authentic. So same, but different. And different is what I want to tell you all about, because Malaysia is diverse, as you've heard from the previous speakers, but it's very different in terms of practice and how people view their worldview. So someone from Sabah and Sarawak will have an amazingly different, thank goodness, worldview from someone in the west coast of Peninsular Malaysia, like Kuala Lumpur. In Kuala Lumpur, I think the multi-ethnic and diversity is really all funneled into economics and making money. Whereas as you go away from the city center, it's more about authenticity. So I think if you're looking for authentic collaboration, you really need to look at secondary cities. And secondary cities are friendlier towards collaboration, even though they may not have the budget, because they are hungry and they have large aspirations to catch up on a global scale, if not even on a Kuala Lumpur scale. So that's something that you need to just think about. Like, what is it that you want to look for when you look at collaboration? On another note as well, local governments and governments here are enamored with SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And a lot of people have written them a lot of cities have written them into their city plans. whether 2030 city plan or 2035, the next 30-year goals or the next 50-year goals. So SDG 17 in terms of partnership and collaboration is something that you can actually make good use of when you're writing in or looking for terms of collaboration or funding in that matter. And Malaysians are generally very, very open to collaboration, and they're also very giving. No matter what culture you look at and where they are in Malaysia, we are actually very open and very giving as Malaysians. And it starts with inviting you home for food, and it doesn't stop with feeding you. But it also then means that we open ourselves to you. So that's Malaysia, and that's also the same, but different. So let's look at Malacca, Georgetown, Penang. I've grouped them together because they are both tied in the UNESCO World Heritage Sites. If one fails to meet any of the criteria, the other one loses its status. So it is a marriage that needs to really succeed long term. But both of them approach UNESCO management very differently. Malacca, which is very much federal in terms of influence, approaches things from a very federal sort of like influence, whereas Georgetown, because it is very, very old and very, very proud of its heritage, Georgetown has amongst the largest civil society organizations in Malaysia, over 200. They are real activists living in a small island. And the islanders, which is in Georgetown, as opposed to Butterworth, really are very different from the rest of Penang in that sense. They are truly very proud of their heritage. And so they're very good at basically accepting different things and fusing them. So in terms of fusion, Georgetown, Penang is the place to be if you're looking for exciting different avenues of collaboration. Malacca is very much into tourism and heritage tourism. And I feel that it limits itself because there is so much restrictions from UNESCO of what you can do there, but there's nothing to stop you from using it as a background for things like arts or culture, other forms of culture. Moving very quickly along to Kuala Lumpur and Selangor and the greater Klang Valley, you have very, very ambitious artists because KL and Selangor and the Great Klang Valley is where the money is. It's because it's capital city of Kuala Lumpur. It's also where the big businesses have located themselves, international as well as local big businesses. So everybody migrates and is attracted to Kuala Lumpur. But the pie, because of the competition, is very small. And that's why I'm saying that if you can, please go and look at secondary cities because they have a huge opportunity for working together with their artists. And some of the artists are just world-class and very, very unique. So looking at Johobaru, which is number 6, right here on the tip at the bottom of Peninsula Malaysia, has global aspirations. It is a strong royal town, and the king, the Sultan of Johor, does have a say in a lot of things, and he does actually give back a lot of times to football as well as the arts. And he's also been green-lighted some of the heritage conservation projects that have gone on. But because of its proximity to Singapore, it really wants to play catch up, and it really wants to be the second Singapore. And so projects here have to be slightly larger in scale and global in scale, just like the ones in Kuala Lumpur. For Kota Baru and Ipoh, that's 04 and 03, right? Ipoh is a lovely town and it's known for its food. It's also known for the birthplace of Michelle Yeoh, who's one of our most famous exports. And Ipoh is unique because its strength is also its weakness. So its strength is it's very near Kuala Lumpur, and therefore many people have bypassed Ipoh in terms of investment because they think they want to invest either in Penang, Georgetown, or Kuala Lumpur, which are seen to be more exciting and vibrant. But Ipoh people have started, it's one of the few places that started their own bottom-up regenerative efforts. They have taken control of a old heritage core of the city, and with their own private money, independently, they have rejuvenated the area. Sorry, Tom, how am I doing for time? I can't see.
We're running out of road, unfortunately, Japing.
Okay, so basically, and East Malaysia, please do consider East Malaysia because it is so rich and diverse, and you will not regret having collaborations in East Malaysia because of the rich, diverse culture. So that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japing. And I suppose if I have to say one thing is that this is really a plug to the audience in that the insights research and the cities research does give a lot of detail, and it's underpinned by collaboration as well, where we worked with teams of researchers who are based in or close to the cities that were being focused on. Obviously, Anne worked very close with us as well. So this actually bridges different perspectives. And I think it's the start of a longer process where the co-creation of knowledge is really key in terms of understanding and shining a light on what's happening locally, but also being able to kind of benchmark and give it a wider perspective. So 8 cities have been focused on through the cities research. We hope that there'll be more. And we also hope that they will be used for insights from people who would like to collaborate with the cities, but also the cities themselves can use them to inform their strategic approach. And there's a big focus on sustainable development, on inclusion, on activism, and also on connection between different cities. So if you have a moment or two or several, please do dive in and take a look. I think that we're going to, given the time that we have, the next part of the session is a Q&A. So I think we probably should carry over any Q&A that we were going to have in this session into the next one, if that's okay with colleagues. So I just want to say thank you so much, Anne and Japing, for those introductions.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you everyone who have been on both panels so far. It's been really quite stimulating, and I think people listening in will get a deeper sense, I think, of the kind of country this is, and also the kind of questions that are being asked here. So we now have just 15 minutes for Q&A with from the audience, but also I thought this is a good opportunity, having listened to each other, for people in this panel as well to ask questions of each other. I might get the ball rolling with this because I think there's some interesting things that came across both sets of speakers. So Anne, one thing that you talked a lot about was languages and language, and my mistake earlier, I said 40, but of course it's 140, not 40 languages. And I think, of course, these languages are spoken, they're living languages. They're not languages which, some people are trying to keep alive. These are languages and dialects that are spoken throughout the country. And I think in a meeting that we had with the light surgeons, when Tim was on board and spoke to Tim, he said that he did have one regret. And he said that his regret was coming and discovering how complex languages were in Malaysia, and that he realized that language had been, in some ways, a bit of a barrier for some kinds of exploration. So because of course, coming with limited, of course you had good time given to you in many ways, but of course time is never enough when you want to do things across languages, across translations. Budgets are never enough when you have to work on all these multiple levels of trying to understand, and time and money become very significant. So, Chris, I think I want to ask you, what it was that you would do differently if you had kind of had this realization about language, and what new ways might you have thought about working here? This maybe offer some insights for people who are listening, and maybe Anne, I might get you to jump in, or anybody jump in on this question of language, how you work in collaboration.
I think that's a really good point. I think we were just, as the title suggests, it's a slightly ambitious project in a way, because we were kind of, we started it as a music project, a musical collaboration, and as sort of filmmakers and kind of documentarians and people who are interested in ethnographic film and things, we wanted to explore and bring this whole kind of documentary story to the piece, and wanted to sort of touch on so many different issues. And we had this sort of, although we had, this research period, we still had fairly limited resources, as you say. So I think going back to it, and I'm working on more films in West Africa. I'm doing a project in Japan. Working with kind of translators and giving yourself the time to properly be able to get translation done and subtitling done, because it does take a while. Would in retrospect, I think would have opened it up to other communities. So even though so much of the story and the narrative in it still really resonates to me, I think as a piece of work, it still has great relevance. That we could have gone into more, maybe, given voice to more sort of less established communities, like Oran Asli people. We went with an anthropologist and a guy who's working with groups there, but we didn't interview them, we didn't get their voices, and so things like that, with looking back on it now, would have been lovely, but it would have opened it up in a much, it would have made the process of editing and the kind of translation bigger. And so I think it's just anticipating that. And I think the other thing is like having producers. I mean, we work with several producers on the project. And I think, often people think of producers as a kind of quite a dry sort of administrative role, and it's not. There's so much creativity in working in that way. And I think from my perspective, I think someone who's, if you're embarking on a project in Malaysia or anywhere, it's just like really important to find good people to work with who can give you, not just a kind of, a kind of administrative sort of role, but really get it and help you to connect you with people and cost up things, because obviously ultimately, you've got to deliver something within a time frame and a budget.
I think, Anne, you mentioned this as well earlier when you talked about sorry, the name of the filmmaker. Yes, thank you. You said that she said that there were, many people who wanted to be directors, but not many people who want to be producers and scriptwriters, and there was that kind of lack. And I think that's a very important thing about Malaysia as well. I think that, and for the Malaysians out there listening, I think if you want to do collaborations, being a producer is an important way to go, because there are many artists who may want to do things, but they don't have the producers, the creative producers who want to sort of hop onto that and facilitate that kind of thing. So I think it's a place that we would deeply encourage, I think, Malaysians to try to connect to, Malaysian producers to try to connect, not just Malaysian artists, try to connect to collaborators elsewhere. I mean, so Anne, what insights do you think you have to offer about how to work across language, or what would be a strategy that you think maybe the culture and arts sector in Malaysia could offer to encourage this, so that it's not always, as you said, the BM cis male whose voice is being heard, for example?
Well, I think, precisely because, literature sort of falls through the cracks here, you see an incredible amount of ingenuity and, self-motivation happening. But it just doesn't, we don't see it so much. So in the report, for example, I'm just thinking about how, it's happening anyway without anyone necessarily kind of providing funding. It's just, it could be scaled up that much more. I'm thinking, for example, about publisher, it's Initiative Buku Darul Ehsan, and they are an innovative small publishing house who translate world literature already into Malay, and they are translating Malay short stories into Chinese and Chinese into Malay already. But it's small fledgling, groups. I think there is, Chui Mui, I think she's referring to the fact that for formal training as producers, that there isn't that. So, and of course, the demand has been higher because the production, streaming has become much bigger than ever before. So, View and other online have come on, and the need to create more drama. Yes, typically it has always been, say, in English, that drama, you write the script in English and so forth. But as we know from Netflix and so forth, the subtitles I could, happily watch a Turkish never-ending series or whichever it is, because somebody else is going to be translating it. And as to how to do it in a more sustained way, well, typically we have Dewan Bahasa dan Pustaka, which is, this kind of literature house, but there's a lot of independent initiative taking anyway, and finding links that don't need, well, of course, if in a perfect world, they would also get a lot of public funding as well to support, this is writers as well as publishers. But as Amir Muhammad says also, it's actually opened up much more the opportunities to build independent networks and to set up, you don't actually need, well, you do, of course, to size it up, but it's happening anyway. And it's about meeting the right people to see how to get build these connections. And of course, in a systemic kind of a creative industry build-up, that's supposed to happen. But literature right now falls through the cracks. So something's got to happen there.
Yeah. So thinking about language, not just in literature, but language as a method of collaboration, right? So that how do we collaborate across cultures when there are so many languages, and so that you don't fall into the trap of only collaborating with a small sector of the Malaysian arts potential. So I want to ask Guan a question, a slight sideways step. Guan, because you do a lot of international collaborations. You do, and you've worked a lot in a lot of different countries. So how's language negotiated in those places, and what could we think about for ourselves here and for UK participants as well?
Yeah, I guess that everyone has their tools of language in terms of not language as like a language that we know, but the art language as a tools. So pretty much most of the time when we work together, this is very intimate in a way that, of course, the tools of language is one thing, but then the tools of the arts are the one that actually put everyone together. So I'm not a person that has a very good in language, in like speaking or writing. Perhaps maybe because of my I'm still very well open and be very honest to talk to people in a mix of, as you said, I never know that I have so much of language in my body, like I've born in these like mixed languages, so I feel very comfortable when I travel, when I communicate with different background of language. I kind of understand the body language somehow. Maybe I don't understand what they speak completely, but sometimes I feel it. Yeah.
Well, I think that's an important point because, without trying to scare people off from Malaysia by thinking, well, we can't possibly deal with language. It is the fact that because it's such a, country with so many languages that we do get very sensitive in trying to understand, right? So that we work, as Guan, you said, in the language of the artist, so that there's a lot of careful listening that needs to happen. And I was thinking of something that Tom, you said earlier when you talked about co-creation of knowledge, and it's a co-creation of art that I think is an important thing here. It's not a one-way street in doing a collaboration. So maybe you can talk a little bit more, Tom, about this idea of inclusion, co-creation of knowledge, and why this is important in a collaboration.
Yeah, thank you, Jo. It's really important, and we know that diversity is political wherever you are, and there are issues around access to knowledge or who owns the narrative, and nowhere more so than I think in a policy landscape. And that's where there's a real sensitivity, or we have to be acutely sensitive to where the language is coming from and where and how the boundaries are being drawn. And clearly in Malaysia, as in many countries, cultural policy lacks the diversity and the agility of the people it's supposed to represent. So when it comes to co-creation of evidence and knowledge and co-designing methodologies, it's really important to be sensitive to that power regime, that landscape, and as much as possible to be open to different interpretations and ways of essentially storytelling. So even the boring stuff around definitions of culture, or how do you engage communities, that has to, actually that's not boring, but definitions can get boring, but you have to be sensitive to how the sector is self-defining and how it describes its rationale, its ambitions, its aspirations. And there's often a disconnect, as we have seen in a lot of our research in Malaysia, between the kind of monetization of culture, which tends to be more, I think as Jiao Ping mentioned, more kind of urbanized and kind of metro Klang Valley KL, versus something which is much more around inclusion, sustainability, and activism, which tends to be, but not exclusively, in smaller cities, which are fresher to the cultural policy landscape, and actually in some contexts undertaking evidence-based policy activities for the first time. So I suppose that the only way to get around this is to have as much as possible teams of co-researchers who are culturally literate and have already built trust in different contexts, and also to be purposeful in terms of engineering methodologies that can tell different stories to those which have already been told, that sit within the mainstream of policy discourse. Easier said than done. I hope that the city stuff and the work around been so pioneering in terms of cultural insights, I hope that they help to cross boundaries and debunk some of the stereotypes. And actually, I think that is an impact of looking at questions around culture from different angles and recognizing and embracing the complexity and the politics of that complexity.
Yeah, I think Anne's image of the pixels was, I think, a good one to stay with all of us. I think that there are, so many pixels that, and that there's a richness maybe in depth as well that sometimes we forget about. We are almost at the end of our time, but I do have a question here that I want to ask of Chris. And forgive me if I'm not able to sort of get questions to everybody, but it is a question about, again, for the benefit of people wanting to collaborate from the UK with Malaysian artists. Chris, before you came, I mean, your project is called SuperEverything, the relationship between identity, ritual, and place. Did you know before you came that this is what you wanted to explore? Was identity, ritual, and place what you were intending to explore? How much of it was created when you came here from your encounters?
Thanks. Well, I think that theme, that sort of tripartite relationship between those three things seemed kind of interesting to us anyway. At the time, it was something that was in our minds and in our other work. And then when we first started to engage with Joel Mills and British Council, the theme of identity was one that they were keen on. And we were slightly kind of like, yeah, how can we do this in a way that's not going to be just kind of relevant to the audience in KL, and all the things that has just been said, I think are really important. And I can look back on what we did with very different eyes now on lots of levels. But yeah, I think I mean, you could apply those themes to anywhere, I mean, I would love to apply them to my own country. I think it would be fascinating to do SuperEverything in the UK post-Brexit, post-pandemic. But I think Malaysia is a particularly really interesting country because it has these different cultural kind of, different communities, different languages. It's a really interesting place to explore this because these things are kind of visible and they're kind of, they rub up against each other. And I think we entered that, as I said earlier. I think Farish Noir's book was really informative for me in thinking about how the British colonial rule of Malaysia utilized the kind of census and used the census as a means to divide people and to kind of label them. And I think that's something we're still very much dealing with. And, and we see that with Facebook and with technology and now AI and machine learning and all these kind of new technologies. They're still going to have this sort of colonial biases built into them because it's white, it's the people who are controlling them. So I think all those sort of issues for me were very much kind of in my mind when I went to Malaysia, and I think it was really grey the other people that we spoke to who really informed the project, you know, and that just became a stronger and stronger kind of theme throughout it. And you know, we just sort of used this idea of this sort of kind of census. You know, we wanted to sort of unpick that and try to show how our collective commonality in a sort of in a slightly cheesy way, but we kind of, that's what we wanted to try to make as a piece of work. And I think, you know, lots of things came out of it which were that, and things that weren't, and you know, hopefully it's still a good representation. Obviously at that, you know, it's 10 years old, so it's a piece of work that hopefully still has some resonance. And we look forward to sharing it. We're going to put the whole performance online next year. We have the music, which is beautiful, which was really the genesis of the whole project, will be released, and so hopefully there'll be some more time in the new year to do things in Malaysia with it. I can't wait to come back. It's so frustrating not being able to travel and not being able to be in other parts of the world.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, just to say thank you so much though. And
thank you.
That was there's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot to try to give a quick wrap up for. I think the idea that I just want to leave people with is the idea of questions for yourselves and the audience listening is why you want to do these collaborations. The importance of trying to foster artistic work between nations, trying to have a more inclusive sense in working with other people. In Malaysia, we say, don't be the frog under the coconut shell. So I think the same thing we would say to participants from the UK to come to Malaysia, to not be the frog under the coconut shell, and we too as Malaysians to go elsewhere so we do not become the frog under the coconut shell. And as things become more right-wing and shut up and shut off, maybe it's an important thing for us to think about knowledge sharing, listening, being aware of what other people, innovations other people are doing in other countries, whether it's on TikTok or it's on a big stage, and about the importance of reading the literature of a country. I think in order to understand it, trying to understand it a little bit before you come, and then being open to what's going to happen once you get there, and making sure the collaboration, I think, is a two-way street, and not forgetting the streets that exist in small towns, and not always going to go to the main city center, but the secondary cities, the local governments, the bottom-up regenerative efforts as well, and the careful listening. Thank you so much, everybody, or everyone on this panel. I'm sorry that we didn't have more time to chat. It's been very interesting listening to everyone. And we'll say to all the participants today, good night from all of us, good morning, and good afternoon.